Let's begin with the Gingerbread Platter Set. This set is a 6-piece set and can be purchased individually to mix and match. It contains a star, gingerbread boy or girl, a tree, a house, and a bell. It also includes a 4-inch circle that can be used as a centerpiece for adding a stencil or as a base for a gingerbread house. These cookie cutters can be found at sweetsfromthesoul.com. In addition to the cookie cutter set, I also used 4mm sugar pearls in black and white sanding sugar. This set fits well on a 10-inch cake board or can be displayed on a 12-inch platter in the center of your table or given as a hostess gift at a party. The royal icing was made in piping and flood consistency using Hobby Lobby gel colors. I used light brown, which is a mixture of ivory with a touch of chocolate brown, black, burgundy, white, and green made from forest green with just a touch of black. Our first piece is a gingerbread boy or girl. I outlined the gingerbread using flood consistency. I find that if I do that and then continue to flood right up against the lines, it makes it very easy to complete the flooding without a lot of cleanup at the end. Now I just clean up the edges and it's done. Using my piping consistency in the white, I add the squiggly lines to make the icing on his arms and legs. Then with a flood consistency, I draw an X and fill in each portion with the flood to create a cute little bow tie for this gingerbread boy. I finished it off using an edible marker to make a cute little smile. This gingerbread girl is sporting a red bead necklace and a little bow in her hair made the exact same way as the bow tie. I added some eyelashes around her eyes and we give her a cute little smile to make her have a cheery face. Both of these are finished off with flood at the bottom in the same tan color. Next we have a house. I took an edible marker and drew out or sketched out where I wanted the windows to be and the base of the house to be. This house is going to include a lot of line work and a lot of details, so I opted to flood in a white flood. Again, outlining first helps the flood to fall right into place where you want it to be. Cleaning up the edges is really easy and that just finishes off the flood. Now after it's dried, we're ready for the line work. This whole set includes a lot of line work and that's a skill that you have to learn over time, and I admit that I am rusty with this. But you just allow yourself a lot of grace, and if you use a piping consistency in a bag with a very small hole cut in the tip of it, it's very easy to maneuver the lines and to clean up any mistakes that you might make. I begin at the top with some scroll work to top off both of the windows. When you begin using your line work, if you will touch down, pick up, and draw your bag in the direction you want to go and touch back down. If your line breaks, you can easily fix it with your scribe. And there we have cute little window panes in our windows. When doing scroll work like this, you want to touch down, and continue to slowly drag your bag around to make that curve. Sometimes they don't come out exactly where you want them to be, and you can always take your scribe and clean up the edges and pull them back to where they need to be. If it's not exactly the way that you'd like it, you just pick it up and finish it off again. These details are so small that people are not going to see the smallest little mistakes or imperfections. They're going to be looking at the entire work. And remember, it's a cookie. They're going to end up eating it. Doesn't have to be perfect. So again, allow yourself a lot of grace when doing this fine detailed work. We're going to continue adding scroll work and line work up into the rooftop to outline the edges of the roof. And where our lines connect, hide those areas by adding a dot. I wanted my scroll work to be symmetrical, so I did go back in and fix that little error that I made. And we're going to finish off our line work with just a little scroll on the chimney. Next, we're going to add some greenery. I start by drawing a circle in the arch of the rooftop to add a cute little wreath. Again, I have piping consistency in a bag with a very small hole in the tip of it. I like to use tipless bags and just cut the holes in them. It seems to be finer than any of the tips that I have. And I'm just drawing pine needles across the circle, and I continue until I have it filled in to what I desire. Just touching down, picking up, and dragging over is all you need to do to make the pine needles. Next, I added some 4mm sugar pearls to the wreath. I just didn't like the way that they were looking on the wreath, so as I went on and I began to add the burgundy berries on the wreath, I just felt like they were the wrong size for the scale of the project. They just seemed a little bit too big, so I did end up taking them off of the wreath. Don't you agree? They just were too big for that wreath, so I went ahead and added some more red berries and used my piping bag with a small tip in it to add some snowflakes. Or at least I think they're snowflakes. They could just be white berries. That's up for your interpretation. Next, we're going to add some window boxes under the windows. I've cut a small V in the tip of my bag to make a leaf tip. This is so easy to do. It's easy to make any size leaf tip out of your piping bag. All you need to do now is touch down, give the bag pressure, and release the pressure as you pull up. Then take your stylus and arrange the tips of the leaves in any direction that you need. We're going to add some red berries to these window boxes as well. Continuing the design on into the next window box. And then let's add some white dots to make snow on those window boxes. And there we have all of our greenery finished. Now I added the flood down at the bottom in the tan color just to finish off this piece. The next piece is the tree piece. I wanted to have sections in this one, so I went ahead and flooded in every other section, allowing it time to crust over before flooding the next sections. Next, I added a pine swag at the top, simply repeating the pine needles that I did with the wreath on the other cookies. Filling this in to whatever consistency you want it to be. I wanted it to be pretty full, and so I continued adding the pine needles. I wanted this area pretty full to serve as a backdrop for the red berries and leaves that I'll add in just a minute. Next, I'll add some leaves to finish filling in the design. And to finish it off, I flood the bottom portion with the tan as I did with the others. The next piece is the bell piece. In this piece, I flooded the bottom half of the bell with the tan and the top half with the white. This piece is going to have a lot of line work on it as well, with the leaf and the greenery details. When you're flooding the white portion of this bell, make sure that you're pulling that icing up into the little crevices inside of the bow there. I went ahead before I started and drew out the bow so that I would know exactly where to pipe for that. Alright, let's look at our line work that we're going to do on this piece. I started with the line across just to make that definition between the top and the bottom, and we're going to be doing a drop swag. The way that you do this is by using the piping consistency in the small bag with a small hole cut in it. We're just going to touch down, pull around, and touch back again. Line work is just something that you get better at the more you practice, and obviously I need a little bit more practice with it, but it really is not intimidating at all. Just practice on a piece of paper or something before you get started on it. Now we're going to do a series of graduated beads below each swag by touching down and pulling up and releasing pressure, and then giving it a little bit of a wiggle before you bring it off of the bead. You avoid those little tips that often end up at the top of your beads. If you do have any tips, just take your stylus and pull it down. And we're going to finish off the bottom portion of this cookie with the flood in the tan. The very top part of this section is all that's going to be showing, but make sure that you clean up those edges next to the bottom portion of the bell so that in case they show, you're not seeing any bare cookie there. I then add the greenery as I did in the other cookies. I start off with the pine needle base, adding it in until it feels full enough to support the rest of the embellishments. Next we add the red berries, the white berries, and then we'll use the small leaf tip to add leaves to the branches. Next, we're going to flood the 4-inch cookie that we're going to use in two different ways. We're going to use it as a base for our gingerbread house to sit on, and we can also use it for the base for our stencil. We're going to do it both ways. First, let's make our gingerbread house that's going to sit on top of a 3-inch cookie that we can then sit on top of the 4-inch flooded cookie. I want to go ahead and sketch out the design that I want on this cookie with my edible marker. I am going to include a wreath at the top to match the cookie that's in the platter itself. This cutter also lends itself to having 2 trees on either side that we can use. At first thought, I went ahead and outlined those trees, but then I thought more about it, and I think I wanted to go ahead and use the pine needles to embellish those trees just like we did in the rest of our cookies. After I outline the main cookie that I have, I want to go ahead and outline those windows. I am going to be flooding those windows since they're larger and I don't want the cookie to show behind it, but I did want to go ahead and outline those cookies so that I know exactly where to put the flood. It's crusted over, I go ahead and flood with white. This cookie also is going to have a lot of different line work and details piped on it. I did notice that the icing was looking like it had separated as well. I completed this cookie set over a couple of days, and I think my icing just sat in the bag and started to separate, so I did try to go ahead and mix that on the cookie, but I don't think it's going to matter. Once we get all of our designs added on, we're not going to be able to see those marks in the cookie. Once the flood on the house has dried, I went ahead and flooded in the rooftop. I want to do a little bit of texture on the rooftop, but I also want to add sanding sugar to that area. So I place a piece of copy paper down to catch the extra sanding sugar. I simply sprinkle it on until it is completely covered, knocking off most of what's left on there and taking my brush and cleaning up any excess that's left on the cookie. Once that's done, I could take the piece of paper and put the sanding sugar right back in the jar. Now I'm going to use the pine needle lines that I did before and draw in those trees that are on each side of the door at the house. I start on one side arching up, and then I do the other side arching down. Again, I make sure that I get those trees full enough to where you can't see the white in the background. Next, I do the wreath at the top of the arch in the roof line. I'm doing the wreath the exact same way that I did on the cookie that was in the platter, crossing over that round line with my line work, filling it in as I go. I add the red berries and the white berries. Next, I'm going to begin the line work around the windows. Again, I want this cookie to mirror what we did on the cookie in the cookie platter. So I do the scroll work above the windows in the exact same way that I did on that cookie. I want to add some details to this door. I thought I would make it a two-sided door by drawing a line down the middle and adding wood slats on both sides with diagonal lines in my piping consistency frosting. Again, I'm just touching down, pulling over to the side. Now let's cover up all of those edges with one more line around the outside. When I'm coming down to the edge of the cookie, I always pull my line off the cookie and then cut it with my scribe instead of just stopping it right there at the edge. Then I add 2 doorknobs, and I want to put a swag of pine needles and flowers and leaves above the door. Working in much of the same way as I did with all the rest of the swags that we did. I felt like this gave a touch to the top of that door. That area was a little bit bare in this cookie, and I just felt like it needed more detail there. Again, I'm always thinking about balance. Is it symmetrical? Are the embellishments that I'm putting on the cookie balanced? Top to bottom and side to side. I always have to just stop and take a minute and look back at that. I wanted to go ahead and add a little trim to those windows as well. And then I decided I wanted to put the illusion of snowflakes falling in front of the house. So I'm doing that by using tiny little white dots just randomly placed about in front of the door. Since I'm putting 2 cookies back to back, I did another cookie identically the same. Now let's glue the 2 cookies together. I use my royal icing, covering the back of that cookie very well. This cookie originally went with another set, and the bottom of the cookie was not flat. It did have some curves. So when I baked these 2 cookies, I took my cake knife and cut the bottoms of them off so that they would both be flat. I lined them up, and now I'm gluing both of them to this 3-inch cookie that's going to serve as the base of our 3D design that we have here. Next, I'm going to flood that bottom cookie with white icing. When I start to lay down the flood, I want to make sure that I'm taking it right up to the bottom, if not a little bit of a little ledge over the bottom of both of those cookies. I'm going to eventually make the illusion of snow piled up against the house on both sides of the door. So I'm not being very careful about my icing. I want it to have a little bit of a texture because we're going to be adding the white sanding sugar to that area as well. While the base cookie is still wet, I want to cover the top of the cookie as well. I'm using my piping consistency bag to cover the top of the cookie with back and forth strokes to give it a little bit more texture. Once the roof line is covered, I do take a spoonful of sanding sugar and brush it over the top of the house as well as the base of the house. I wasn't able to pick up the cookie this time to be able to place it on a piece of paper to save that sugar, but I did use it very sparingly. And here's our result. This is what it looks like with our gingerbread house sitting on the base of that cookie. I think this would make a beautiful centerpiece. This could also be boxed in a 4 or 6 inch tall cake box and given as a hostess gift at a party. Another option to this platter is to simply use our Sugar Kisses and Spice Wishes stencil to go on the 4-inch cookie. This is also a great, less formal presentation of this platter. This stencil, as well as the cookie cutters for this platter, can be found at sweetsfromthesoul.com.